Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Wormley. I do social media here at Fantasy Pros, and joining me for today's show are a couple of terrific guests. First up is a man who knows very little about good TV shows, but a whole lot about fantasy football. It's Fantasy Pros' very own Kyle Yates. Yates, how are you feeling after a brutal Week 7?
Oh, I managed to escape with a couple of wins here in Week 7 by the skin of my teeth. And now we're moving on to, we only have 2 teams on bye this next week. So I get a lot of players back for my fantasy football lineup. So I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, it's like whiplash going from what we were lost last week to only missing 2 teams this week. Of course, they are 2 pretty good offensive teams. Also joining us today is the venerable Derek Brown, a wonderful fantasy analyst who you guys know from FTN. Derek, I do have to ask, what would you have sold Tom Brady's 600th passing touchdown football for?
Oh, Lord. I mean, anything and everything I possibly could. I still feel like the man got the wrong end of the deal on that one. Like, I'd have been kind of probably trying to hold out. At least that's what I think I would have done in that in those instances. But it's still crazy to see all that transpire. Like, social media, that was all you could find all day yesterday.
And it's crazy because, like, I would imagine being in that scenario, I'm not going to say no to Tom Brady or the Bucks. Like, you can't bring yourself to haggle, but at the same time, like, you could have gotten so much more. Yates, what would you have tried to get?
Okay, so here's the thing. That both can be correct. Did the guy sell low? Yes. But also, did he do the right thing? Yes, he did. Because can you imagine if he hadn't turned that ball over, how much crap he would have gotten from the fans in the stands, like, around him? You know, like, that's the right thing. Tom Brady, who just led your team to a Super Bowl this past year, wants his ball back, like a toddler, wants his ball back, then you give the ball back, man. Like, but yet, at the same time, I think he walked into that game with nothing, and he walked out with 2 signed jerseys, a signed helmet from Tom Brady, like Bitcoin, you know, like you know, like he walked out a lot richer than he walked in. So I feel like that's a win.
Yeah, he would have been public enemy number 1 if he didn't give it back, and they would have needed security like Steve Bartman trying to leave Wrigley Field.
I was just about to say Steve Bartman comes to mind. Yeah.
I think the thing that gets lost in translation in all of this, did y'all see the reaction video by Mike Evans? Like, he's sitting on the bench and they tell him, like, that was the 600th ball you just gave away, and he's like, oh, like, he couldn't believe it. He's like, oh, dear God. Dear God, I'm never going to get another red zone look ever.
That's one of those Southwest commercials, like, want to get away. That is rough. As I mentioned, I am the social media guy here at Fantasy Pros, so let me quickly make sure the listeners can find all 3 of us online. Yates' Twitter handle is at KyleYNFL. Derek is at Dbro_FFB, and I can be found at Ryan Wormley. That's Wormley like how you dress when it's cold outside. And of course, you can find Fantasy Pros all over the internet at Fantasy Pros. You can also find us at fantasypros.com/myplaybook, of course. And there you can sign up for our entire suite of tools to help you dominate the 2021 fantasy season. That includes our trade analyzer, which allows you to get instant analysis for any trade offer. We also have a trade finder that can do the boring, heavy lifting part of negotiations, which is simply discovering deals that can help you win your league. I use these tools to come away with Mark Andrews in one of my dynasty leagues, which was obviously very exciting as a Ravens fan and also exciting as somebody who has seen the tight end landscape. I am not what you would call a talented negotiator, which is why I got stuck agreeing to host a show with Yates every week. So my playbook's trade tools go a long way for me. You can also find us on the Fantasy Pros Discord server, which can be found at fantasypros.com/chat. Anybody can sign up for some good old-fashioned fantasy football chatter, but remember, premium subscribers gain access to dozens of extra channels, including AMAs with analysts like Dan Harris and Joey P, and of course Yates. You can also get advice from fellow fanatics, and we even have extra channels for other topics like movies, music, and yes, Yates, television. Fellas, let's jump into Monday Night Football here. Kind of a boring one. We've been pretty blessed with some incredible primetime games pretty much all season long from the get-go. Last night was not one of those. Alvin Kamara did have a monster day through the air, just 20 rushes for 51 yards on the ground, but 10 catches, 128 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. Feels like the first time all season long that the Saints have been willing to throw to their best pass catcher. Yates, what did you make from his big game?
I mean, this is incredible. Alvin Kamara, workhorse season here this year. I mean, 31 total opportunities for Alvin Kamara last night. Like, I will gladly take that as a fantasy football manager. So, I mean, we know that he can thrive when he gets the volume, specifically as a passer, but it's encouraging to see that he's getting the work on the ground as well. So I think moving forward, if Alvin Kamara is not a top 3 running back, I mean, he is definitely in the top 5 conversation for sure.
Derek, DK Metcalf had 2 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown, which looks pretty good when you're looking at it. But of course, basically all of that production came on the 184-yard touchdown. I think it was until the fourth quarter that he even got another target after that catch. So that was sort of an interesting game to watch from him. He obviously is a big play guy. And interestingly enough, it was the 1-year anniversary of the night that he chased down Budda Baker in the crazy play that went viral. So he seems to really like playing on October 25th. What do you make of him for the rest of the season?
I think he's a good buy low, to be honest. I mean, if Russ comes back, I think he's going to get the target volume. I mean, last night he got Lattimore on the 1 deep target, bullied him down, and then kind of went silent the rest of the game. But I think DK is a good buy low. I think target share is still going to be there, and if we get Russ back any faster, which it sounds like he's trying to do every single thing he possibly can to get back on the field. Plus, the matchups are a little bit better coming up for Seattle as well. So I think that if you're looking at him, still the ceiling is there. All we need is Russ back under center to actualize that, and some better matchups moving forward, even if it is Geno.
Yates, quickly just on Alex Collins, 16 rushes, 35 yards, nothing special. How interested are you in both rostering him and playing him going forward as long as Carson is out?
He was purely, when we picked him up, he was purely just a volume play, right? We know what Alex Collins is. We know that he's not a special running back or anything like that at the NFL level, but he was going to be valuable for fantasy football because he was going to get volume. So continuously, I was putting him as a low-end RB2. I mean, even in this past week where it was Bipocalypse, I had him at RB25. So it signaled that he is not someone that we really want to lean on for fantasy purposes, but you can still rule him out there because he's going to get touches.
Real quick, just on the defenses, I mean, was this more of an offensive, whatever the opposite of an explosion is, or was this 2 defenses that are starting to get better here as we get into October? Derek, are you interested in either of these defenses just as streamer options going forward in the next month or so?
I mean, I think New Orleans has shown already since the outset of the season that all of the losses of this offseason really didn't do a bunch to knock them down a peg. I mean, they've gotten really good cornerback play out of Lattimore. Their run defense is still elite. So when they can drop into coverage and play 2 high safeties and make you beat them underneath, the pass rush is still good, especially with them getting Marcus Davenport back. Yeah, the Saints are a top-tier fantasy defense for the rest of the season. Seattle, I chalk this up more as versus New Orleans. I mean, basically you have Alvin Kamara and maybe Marquez Callaway to account for. So I'm not really looking at Seattle. Their run defense, I think, is pretty good. So not necessarily a team I'm trying to attack with running backs, but as far as their pass defense, no, I'm not worried about DJ Reed. I'm not worried about their cornerbacks. I still think this is a unit that you can still exploit through the air.
And just to mention, so you don't go in blind, there are some difficult matchups coming up for both of these defenses. The Seahawks, they host the Jaguars, and they have a bye, and then Packers and Cardinals are their next 2 games after that. The Saints' next 3 are Bucks, Falcons, and Titans, so definitely not the matchups you'd want to see for those defenses. Guys, we've got over 1 million teams synced to our My Playbook tool, so don't forget to sync your leagues for free and get access to great tools like our cheat sheets, league power rankings, start-sit assistance, and more. In My Playbook, the trades going on continue to get more and more interesting. We're actually going to start with the receivers today because our number 1 most traded player since Week 7 is Allen Robinson. This is somebody that we've talked about on the show a lot, so I'll start with you, Yates. Are you buying, selling, or holding on Robinson after yet another terrible performance by pretty much the entire Bears offense? And where would he rank for you rest of the season?
Oh, man, this is rough. I don't want Allen Robinson at this point. Until we see something change with the coaching staff, something drastic happen here with Chicago, I don't think we can trust any of the receiving options. You look at, from a logistical standpoint, from a logic, you just say, this past matchup, we were supposed to see the receivers do well. And guess what? They didn't. So we can't trust them at this point. We cannot trust them. Allen Robinson is at wide receiver 52, I think, in my rest of season rankings now. So this is a guy that I just want no part of. There are other players that I am willing to rule out there. If I've got Robinson, I am currently sitting him. until we see a couple of consecutive games here that he puts together that are fantasy relevant. Otherwise, I'm not going after him. I don't think this is a buy low opportunity, really.
Wow, wide receiver 52. That's one of the most shocking things. If you would have told me that 2 months ago, that I would be hearing that on a podcast. It's wild. Derek, what about you with A-Rod?
Same. I think he's a wide receiver 5 the rest of the way moving forward until we see something out of Chicago that resembles something that doesn't look like a high school offense. I mean, they've been hovering around 40% neutral passing rates. This is abysmal. Their offensive line can't stop anybody, and everybody wants to put this off on Justin Fields, and trust me, I am one of the biggest Justin Fields stands out there. Justin Fields is not being put in a situation where he can succeed. I mean, you have an offensive line that can't stop anybody. He is being neutered by the passing rates. And this all trickles down to Allen Robinson. So people want to poke at chemistry for Chicago's passing attack. No! It goes to the play calling. It goes to the pace and all these other types of things. And the fact that we haven't even talked about here, Allen Robinson has been banged up in recent weeks. Like, he's been limited in practices and dealing with injuries. And whether we want to talk about how true practice reports are and how much, we really gain out of those, because teams will say, oh, he doesn't carry an injury designation, and then we see guys still banged up in games constantly. So take those with a grain of salt. But this is all to say that Allen Robinson is definitely a hold. You're not going to be getting him, you're not going to get offers for him from anybody right now, and you're probably not going to drop him for anybody on the waiver wire just based off of upside. So yeah, he's a hold, and it's painful. It's painful to see this for Allen Robinson, and it's painful to see this for this entire Bears passing attack.
Throughout the show, we'll be offering trade comparisons that are pulled from our My Playbook data. These comparisons are some of the most popular accepted trades for these players since Sunday's games. Yates, I'll give you one too. Allen Robinson and Miles Sanders for Corey Davis and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. A lot of injured guys in that one.
Yeah, for sure. I would probably prefer the Corey Davis and Clyde Edwards-Helaire side of that. I mean, when CEH comes back, we know that he's going to get... He's involved in this offense. And Miles Sanders, I mean, I don't know how long he's going to be out. Even if he is back, I don't know what his upside is. So, yeah, I would probably just take the Corey Davis and CEH side of that.
Our next most traded wide receiver is Chase Claypool. He's obviously coming off a bye week, but the game before the bye, he had just 17 yards against the Seahawks. Derek, are you buying, selling, or holding Claypool? And roughly, where is he for you rest of the season?
I think Claypool can be looked at as a wide receiver 3 with upside. I think Pittsburgh is going to be a team that they're still 13th in neutral script passing rates. Claypool is a guy that we saw him get a 17% target share in the first game without Juju. And I think that weekly you're looking at a guy that's going to be commanding a 20 to 25% target share possibly. And then maybe the 25 is being a little bit rich. But still a guy that has the talent. He still has over a 2 yards per route run. So, I mean, the effectiveness is there. I know Big Ben is terrible, and I'm not shying away from that, but with Chase Claypool, it's a bet on talent. So if you can get him for cheaper than that, or somebody where I think there's still some upside to be had based off of volume and the talent there, I still would be buying Chase Claypool, but it all depends on your league and what you're having to give up.
Yates, how much did Juju's injury affect how you view Claypool, and from what you've seen from him since Juju got hurt, where are you ranking him rest of the season?
Yeah, it certainly bumped him up just because of the available target share. And Juju wasn't doing nearly anything with his opportunity, but yet he was commanding a significant target share in this offense. So it opens things up a little bit. I think it benefited Pat Freiermuth more than anything else as far as the targets over the middle of the field. So it opens things up here for Claypool. I still have faith in what he can do because the talent is there. We've seen the blow-up performances. Claypool is right on the edge of a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 for me moving forward.
Yates, I promise this is an actual trade that was made. I didn't just find an excuse to mention this guy's name, but would you trade Claypool for your friend Melvin Gordon?
At this point, I would prefer Claypool just because I think he has more upside. Now, if I have a need at the running back position, of course, then I'm always going to lean towards the running backs. But in a vacuum, I will take Claypool in that one.
Derek, how about Claypool for DeVonta Smith?
Ooh, that's a really, really good conundrum to have. I like the usage for DeVonta Smith, although I do believe that the ceiling is going to be higher for Claypool. DeVonta Smith, we still haven't seen him garner a massive amount of usage in the red zone for Philly yet. That still is going to flow through, I think, Dallas Goedert and possibly the running game. So I do still lean with Chase Claypool there because we've seen the red zone usage. The dude is a monster once they get inside the 20.
Let's move to the running backs now. Most traded here is actually one of the position's studs, Austin Ekeler. He's another guy coming off a bye who had a terrible week before the bye. Derek, we'll start with you again. Are you buying, selling, or holding on Ekeler? And where would you rank him roughly among the running backs rest of season?
If you can get Ekeler off of anybody, oh my lord, you need to go send out offers everywhere, anywhere possible right now. Like, his mentioning here just really surprised me when I got this email and I was like, what? People are giving Austin Ekeler away? Like, how? He's a top 5. How? You can make a really good conversation that he's a top 3 running back for the rest of the season. I mean, that's where he's at right now. He's RB2. A guy that is staring down, and this is after missing a week. 6th in red zone touches. 4th in weighted opportunity at the position. If anybody is going to be parting with Austin Ekeler, yes, give me all that smoke. I think that he is firmly the lowest I'm ranking Austin Ekeler the rest of the season, considering he's Alvin Kamara for the Chargers. That's what we're looking at, people. Then if you can get him, yes, he's not falling outside the top 5 in running backs for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I almost didn't want to include him because he seems like such an obvious buy, but he really was the number 1 most traded guy. So again, guys, feel like you can go out there and try and offer some of these trades. Worst thing that happens is somebody says, no, Yates, what about you? Buying, selling, or holding?
Yeah, for sure, buying Austin Ekeler. And here's the key piece. Dan Harris talks about this when he does his trade value chart, is that the players that are past their buy have value, like have an increased value here. And Austin Ekeler is past his buy. So if I'm looking at, I've got Ekeler at 5 in my rest of the season running back rankings. Okay, so this just signals that this is a locked-in top 5 option moving forward. DeAndre Swift, I've got at 12. So a trade that I think you can make right now is DeAndre Swift for Austin Ekeler. People are going to say, well, that's in the same tier. No, it's not. Like, Austin Ekeler is a tier above because DeAndre Swift has not had his bye week yet. Austin Ekeler has. That is a positional advantage there. So Austin Ekeler at 5 for me. I would absolutely be looking at trading away someone like DeAndre Swift for him.
Yates, I do have a trade comparison here that includes DeAndre Swift. It's Austin Ekeler and Justin Jefferson for Zeke Elliott and DeAndre Swift. Which side would you like there?
Okay, Austin Ekeler and Justin Jefferson for Ezekiel Elliott.
And DeAndre Swift.
And DeAndre Swift.
A lot of big names.
A lot of big names. Jeez. I would probably take the double running back there. I would probably take the double running back side of that, but that's pretty close. I mean, if it all depends on what I need on my roster, but the double running back aspect of that is pretty tempting.
Derek, I've got one here for you. Austin Ekeler straight up for DeAndre Hopkins and Javonte Williams.
Oh, it's Ekeler. It's Ekeler there. I love Javonte Williams, and I think that if he gets the work, and I know maybe I should say some pro Melvin Gordon things on this show because I don't want him to watch this and come after me as well. But if Javonte Williams will ever get the role, he's a league winner. It's a fact. Their schedule down the stretch is ridiculously awesome, but considering all things and getting the step up there, because DeAndre Hopkins is still, the target share has not been there. And we see Arizona spreading out the targets. I don't think the massive top 5 ceiling is there for him. It's Ekeler for me.
Let's quickly touch on one more most traded player, Darrell Henderson, running back for the Rams. He continues to dominate the workload in that Los Angeles backfield, although that hasn't been quite as fruitful as we might have imagined before the season began. He's yet to reach 90 rushing yards in a game this season. He's coming off a season-low 45 yards on the ground on Sunday. He is catching the ball a bit, and he's obviously getting so many snaps in what is a high-powered offense. Yates, very quickly, are you buying, selling, or holding on Henderson?
Absolutely buying. I've got Henderson at 11 in my rest of the season running back rankings. So if there are people who are concerned about what we saw here in a smash spot, right? I had Darrell Henderson at RB3 on the week this past week, just because it was up against Detroit. We thought that he was going to go off. That didn't happen here. So that's kind of the opportunity where people can say, okay, I thought I had this expectation for Darrell Henderson. It didn't come true. So this is the opportunity where you can swoop in and buy. I've got Darrell Henderson still at 11 on the year. So I think he is absolutely someone that you can go buy.
Derek, what about you?
Oh, absolutely. If you can get your hands on Darrell Henderson, especially considering the state of the running back position as a whole, you absolutely need to go do that. I'm with Yates. I think that depending on how your rankings sift out, he's anywhere from 7 to probably 10 for me. So I love him because the fact of it is he's gonna get all the work. Sony Michel has not been a factor in this backfield. He's playing nearly 90% plus snaps when he's fully healthy. If anybody's willing to sit here and say, okay, well, he disappointed versus the Lions. Yes, absolutely, unequivocally, go buy now.
Derek, I'll give you just our only trade comparison here. Are you willing to trade Henderson for Keenan Allen and Jaylen Waddle?
Oof. I mean, not to too much foreshadowing here. I mean, I love Keenan Allen. I think you need to go buy him, but I'll take the Henderson side of that and this is only because if you look at both of those positions as a whole, I am more confident in my ability to stream and find wide receivers that I can plug in and play on a weekly basis based off of matchups versus finding a running back on a weekly basis that's going to be able to garner that type of workload that Henderson is seeing.
Derek, that's not a foreshadowing. That's called a transition. So it was a very nice segue by you, because we are about to move in to everybody's favorite segment, Buy Low, Sell High. And in keeping theme with the rest of the show, let's mix things up and start with the receivers. Derek, I'm very curious. Who is your Buy Low wide receiver?
I mean, obviously, I'm just giving the show away here. Keenan Allen. Definitely. I think that considering, and I understand that there was some rumors that he missed practice yesterday, and so obviously something to keep note of. But with Keenan Allen, I think it's getting lost in the mix. This guy is still staring at a 24.6% target share, 18th amongst all wide receivers. There was regression that I think is due for Keenan Allen. He's 4th in red zone targets, and a guy that the last time we saw him on the field, the Ravens blew the Chargers out. So if that's anybody's lasting taste right now, they're sleeping on a guy that he's wide receiver 25 right now. I think that you couple Keenan Allen's still great usage in this passing attack, as well as Mike Williams is banged up. I mean, the fact that his knee was swollen walking into the bye week, that is a substantial injury, because you don't just manage to get knee swelling, just wake up one morning and be like, oh, look at that. That I think that Keenan Allen is a screaming buy. If anything, regardless of his current state with Mike Williams, if Mike Williams goes out, Keenan Allen is going to eat and probably see a top 5 target share in the NFL.
Let's assume for a second that Williams does get back to full health relatively quickly here. Does it concern you at all that Herbert seems to have a really strong connection with Williams, where he seems to look for him in those big spots more so than you might have thought he would, considering you have a Keenan Allen on the team?
No, I mean, I think that this is really a 1A, 1B situation. It really comes down to weekly matchups, and Keenan Allen's always been a guy that's been driven by volume. The volume is still there. The big plays have been there for Mike Williams, but again, when you're seeing, you've got a top 5 clip in red zone usage, and we haven't seen the production match over week after week. It's a guy that screams regression. When the regression hits, he's going to be elite for multiple weeks.
Let's get a trade comparison in here. Would you trade Mark Andrews for Keenan Allen? Assuming you have a startable tight end that you can fill in.
I feel better about the ability to stream tight ends on a weekly basis, and it's gross out there, people. I get it. But if you could have picked up somebody like Ricky Seals-Jones, and depending on how long Logan Thomas is out, as well as just cobbling together, if you hit the Moali Cox week where he scores a touchdown right, I have my abilities to, I feel sound in that, or for other people's abilities out there to sit here and stream tight ends over trying to find that top 5 upside wide receiver.
Yates, who's your favorite buy low receiver?
It's actually pretty interesting. I just realized this. The 2 names that I have as far as my buy low and sell high are actually the players that I have signed helmets for here. So this is a Calvin Ridley signed helmet, so we'll get to him in a minute. But the other one is a DJ Moore signed Panthers helmet from Pristine Auction, and I'm going to talk about DJ Moore here. Buy low windows are created when reality doesn't meet expectations. And so with DJ Moore, when we had the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks of the season where DJ Moore just looked like he was going to help carry fantasy rosters to championships, and now over the last 3 weeks, we've seen this Carolina Panthers offense come crumbling down. But yet, at the same time, while DJ Moore hasn't delivered massive performances like he was earlier on this season, he's still been incredibly consistent. He's still been someone that you can rely on as a wide receiver too. So we are having to adjust our expectations. He's no longer a top 5 wide receiver in rest of season rankings. He's now I think he's at wide receiver 10 in my rest of season rankings. So that still signals that this is a really, really valuable fantasy asset, and there are people that are frustrated with DJ Moore because, again, the expectations were sky high based on what we saw in the first few weeks of the season. So DJ Moore is someone that I am looking to go out there and acquire, and especially if you ask me right now which team trades for Deshaun Watson, I think Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers are going to be the team that does it. And while we don't know exactly what the situation is going to look like, if Watson does take a snap on the NFL field, in the first week that he gets there or whatever, that's upside for DJ Moore, right? Going from Sam Darnold to Deshaun Watson as far as a passer, that's upside. So I will go with DJ Moore here as my top buy low wide receiver.
Couple notes on Moore. Double-digit targets in 5 of 7 games this season. He had more than half of the Panthers' total receiving yards on Sunday, but of course that was only 73 yards because they were not very good on Sunday, as they haven't been for a couple of weeks. Ignoring everything going on with Watson, just in a vacuum, if he were the Panthers' quarterback, where would you have Moore rest of season then?
As far as Deshaun Watson?
Yes.
I would probably have DJ Moore top 5. Like, I would lock him in because the target share is going to be there. And, of course, the quarterback play is a lot better. They're going to be moving the ball. And we could see the touchdown opportunities come back for DJ Moore. So, yeah, probably top 5.
Let's do another trade comparison across positions. Would you trade Jalen Hurts for Moore? And again, let's assume that your leftover QB would be somebody capable but clearly worse, like a Ryan Tannehill or somebody in that range. Jalen Hurts for DJ Moore.
Is that a one quarterback league?
Let's call it a super flex league to make it more difficult.
Yeah, because the one quarterback league is like for sure send that away 100%. The super flex league brings that a little bit closer. I would still probably take DJ Moore, assuming that I have a replacement value option there for Jalen Hurts.
Derek, who is your favorite sell high wide receiver?
Oh, I'm sorry, Yates. I illuminated to this before we got on the show, man. It's got to be Robert Woods. I think that the Week 5 blow-up is masking his rest of season production. Now, if you look at his target share, it looks great right now, 20%. Like, that's not terrible. You take out the massive boom week, and that drops to 17%. His yards per route run have been clipping down. He's a guy that we know who the number one here is. It's obviously Cooper Kupp. And as much as I love Robert Woods, I mean, outside of the Week 5, this is what your production you've been getting out of Robert Woods. Wide receiver 46, wide receiver 44, 65, 27, and 37. So right now that he is a guy that is still, I mean, you could find him at wide receiver 26 as far as the production on the season. His one blow-up week is masking what we've basically seen the rest of the season. If you can get rid of Robert Woods and put somebody with him in a trade, I would absolutely be doing that right now to upgrade a tier.
Yates, do you disagree?
It all depends on what your expectations are for and how we view Robert Woods, right? Because if the expectations and the view for Robert Woods is that he's back as a high-end wide receiver too, then you sell high. That's an opportunity, a perfect opportunity to sell high, and like Derek said, move up a tier. I'm not going to disagree with him as far as the stats are the stats. The opportunity is the opportunity. So if we can take advantage of people's expectations and viewpoint on Robert Woods and sell high, then you do that. But it all comes down to how does the rest of your league view Robert Woods? Are you going to be able to truly, it's not just a sell just for the sake of selling because the value is going to bottom out here at any point. It's just, can you take advantage of some misconceived notions about his value?
Yeah, you could argue that it's almost a sell low if you really are viewing that Week 5, outlier as a true outlier, not representative of what will come the rest of the season. This is a huge trade here for our comparison, and it's something that I usually don't like to do because it's hard to keep track of so many names. But this trade actually went down, and so I just wanted to bring it up because it's such a blockbuster. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Derek. A manager traded away Robert Woods, Darren Waller, Michael Thomas, CeeDee Lamb, Antonio Gibson, and Matthew Stafford.
Goodness.
For Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes, Mike Gesicki, Darrell Henderson, and Emmanuel Sanders. I know that's a lot, but just shooting from the hip, who wins that trade?
I mean, they basically traded like half the team. Oh, Lord. I'll take the Tyreek Hill side of that with Patrick Mahomes. I think that, and part of this is Darren Waller's injury. It doesn't freak me out, but like the other side of the coin is, I think Mike Gesicki has top 3, top 5 tight end upside for the rest of the season. Considering his target share, considering what we're seeing out of Miami, I like him for the rest of the season. And the bounce back is going to be real for Kansas City. I get it, it's the popular kid thing to do to just trash on them right now. It's still freaking Patrick Mahomes. It's still Tyreek Hill, people. Like, top 3, top 5 production the rest of the season is still in the range of outcomes for these players. Yeah, I all the names, and I get it. There was a lot of names in there.
A lot.
You had mentioned Antonio Gibson. That was on the other side, or what they're getting rid of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Foreshadowing. I'll take the Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes side.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned Gesicki's upside. Like Darren Waller's on the other side of that deal, but he hasn't done a ton since that Week 1 blowout. That almost looks more like an outlier for him in the same way Week 5 did for Woods. Yates, give me your top sell high receiver, and you know the drill. Rest of season rank, how far he's moved, etc.
Yeah, I just talked about it. It's the helmet right here. That's Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, I think at this point, this is your last opportunity to really take advantage of the fact that he scored a touchdown and his fantasy points are inflated here because what we have seen from Ridley so far this season has not been great. I think as we look at his overall stats, and I mean, even he's getting the opportunity, significant target share in this offense, but it is not translating to much from a fantasy production standpoint. So this, I think, is the time where I am looking to get out and just avoid the headache here because we're starting to see Kyle Pitts truly take over. I mean, Pitts, what he's done the past couple weeks is just ridiculous. And then we're seeing Cordell Patterson outproduce Calvin Ridley in this offense. And now we have Russell Gage back in the fold to take away some targets too. It's just concerning for me. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that he scored a touchdown this past week on 4 receptions for 28 yards. I'm taking advantage of that and moving off him if I can.
Yeah, after his stellar 2020, only topped 63 yards once in a game this season. Like you mentioned, he caught just 4 of his 10 targets this past week. You mentioned Kyle Pitts coming on strong. Does it really concern you that much to have another alpha in the offense when he was able to play so well with Julio Jones dominating targets as well last season?
Right, that's a fantastic point. But I think at this point, it's just not translating to consistent production. Right, with Julio, we at least had the track record to be able to say, like, Julio's dominating the target share, and Calvin Ridley is still getting his, and it's translating to production. At this point, it's not. Like you just said, 10 targets, 4 receptions. Like, it's just not working. And so this is the point where I think Calvin Ridley is still going to be a valuable fantasy asset. You know, this again, it goes back to the Robert Woods discussion. It's what's the value that you're placing on him. For me, he's a mid-range wide receiver too. And if I can take advantage of that and even move within a tier, I'm normally not a fan of like moving within a tier as far as wide receiver trades and things like that. But at this point, if I can find someone who has more consistent production, I will take that.
I'm going to give you not as big a trade as the last one, but a bigger trade with 5 players here. Calvin Ridley and Darrell Henderson and Javonte Williams for Robert Woods and Austin Ekeler.
I will take the Austin Ekeler and who did you say, Robert Woods?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take that side of it.
And then just a quick 1-for-1, Calvin Ridley for Darrell Henderson. It sounds like you might prefer Henderson.
I would prefer Henderson. Give me the running back in that situation.
Okay, cool. Let's go to the running backs now, which we skipped earlier because of the incredible segue by Derek. Yates, I will start with you. Give me your number 1 buy low running back right now.
This is another player that I talked about with buy low windows are created from expectations not meeting reality. And Antonio Gibson is my buy low running back here. With Gibson, he has definitely not lived up to the hype of what we thought he was going to be coming into the year. That is 100% correct. But as we look at what he has done so far this season, he's still producing. He's still getting work, and he's dealing with this injury, a stress fracture in his shin. Like, that sounds incredibly uncomfortable. Like, I don't want that. And he's still at least getting enough done here. And as we look ahead to the upcoming schedule, we look at Antonio Gibson, and this is all coming at it from the angle of he's still dealing with this injury. He has week 9 up against Denver, which on paper is a tougher matchup than it actually is. And then he has the bye in week 10. And I think that bye week is critical because that is the opportunity where we are able to allow him to rest and allow him to be able to recuperate here, take some time off, and deal with that injury and come back strong down the stretch. So if I am a team that I am looking to gear up for a playoff run, I look at Antonio Gibson as a perfect buy low player for me where I'm able to target him, get him onto my roster as potentially a RB2, RB3 in that range, and I'm able to just roll moving forward into the playoffs because he's still going to have value.
Would you go so far as to trade Miles Sanders and Terry McLaurin just for Antonio Gibson?
I wouldn't. Terry McLaurin I would prefer to have over Antonio Gibson.
That's fair. Now, Derek, instead of your buy low running back, I want to jump ahead to your sell high because it's, drumroll please, Antonio Gibson. So tell me, please, why you disagree so emphatically with Yates.
I love doing podcasts with Derek because you and I view fantasy football very, very differently. And we have very differing opinions, and you bring a ton of valuable stats to the table. So I'm excited to hear this.
I was so excited when you guys sent your names and just wringing my hands over.
Well, he hinted at it earlier, so I knew it was coming. Well,
he hinted. I knew I was bringing Antonio Gibson up. I didn't know Yates was going to talk about him as a buy because, look, I think this is fantastic conversation, and the point that it makes too is that you see you hear too many podcasts out there that it's all hand holding. Like, let's hug for the entire show. That doesn't help people all the time. Hardly any. They need to hear differing opinions and reasons why, because you can make the case for both of these points. With Antonio Gibson, for me, I am worried about the health with the shin. I think that it's limited his effectiveness. Now, Yates' points as far as, like, if he gets healthier, can he produce down the stretch? That is definitely possible. The other side of this is that with Antonio Gibson, what we've seen since he's popped up on the report with having to deal with the shin, the volume hasn't changed. 17 touches, now he's bumped down to 16.5. That hasn't changed, but we have seen the effectiveness decline. He was averaging 95 total yards over those first 3 weeks. Now, since week 4, that's dropped down to 61. My biggest concern for Antonio Gibson is it is also Antonio Gibson, but it is also part of the reasons why we see the limited usage. It's not only the health, but the state of this defense, unless they bounce back in a massive way, is going to hurt Antonio Gibson. Because you look at it, and we have a usage report tool over at FTN that I try to use when diagnosing, like, you're looking at spreads, you're looking at games, you're looking at scripts. And when Washington is down 9 to 13 points, and they've run the 7th fewest positive game script plays so far. So unless this defense changes, this is still going to be a team that is down and down often and down early and down in a lot of their games. You have Antonio Gibson, he has no targets and only 11% of the rushing share. Whereas you have J.D. McKissic is sitting at a 13% target share and he's getting 55% of the rushing work on the ground when this team is trailing by 9 to 13 points, which, if the defense doesn't bounce back, I worry is going to be a continuing factor for the rest of the season. But this lays out a perfect explanation of Antonio Gibson can be both of these things in the same breath. And a lot of this comes down to, and we've hammered on this already in this episode, is that it depends on your league. It depends on what you're giving up versus what you're having to acquire him. Right. So I think that he fits the mold for both of the sides of this coin.
Yates, the floor is yours for a vehement rebuttal or your closing arguments.
No, I mean, he laid it out perfectly where you say, like, it all depends on, again, expectations and expectation management, how you're viewing him. Antonio Gibson is currently RB18 in our rest of season rankings ECR, and I think that that's kind of around the range where I think we should be viewing him, because there is some risk if you're going to go out there and acquire Antonio Gibson. I think there is some risk, but I am saying that I think that 18 is kind of the floor. Like, I think that's kind of the floor of what he's going to give you, because you get past him, you go to guys like, I mean, Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs at 22, Chase Edmonds at 23, Melvin Gordon. Like, they're not seeing, you mentioned 16.5 attempts per game or whatever, like that opportunity, that is still incredibly valuable at the running back position. So, and I'm saying if he gets that time to be able to rest and recuperate, then moving forward, he's going to be able to do more with that opportunity, and that can help offset the defensive woes here in Washington.
Okay, Derek, let's circle back to the buy lows. Give me your top buy low running back.
It's got to be Chase Edmonds. I love Chase Edmonds, and I think that people are still sleeping on it. Like, they talk about the production and touchdown department. Yes, James Conner is there. Chase Edmonds, before he ended up on the injury report in weeks 5 and 6 with a shoulder issue, RB 12 in fantasy points per game. And this guy, I view him as a top 15 running back for the rest of the season. He bounced back in a big way last week, 16 touches, 90 total yards. If the touchdowns come back to Chase Edmonds, which, if you look at weeks 1 through 4, their red zone opportunities, looking at not only carries inside the red zone, but targets as well, is not very far off. Chase Edmonds had 10 versus James Conner's 14. So if the touchdown pendulum swings back in his way, the health is also trending up. This is still a really, really good offense, top 5 in scoring probably rest of the season. I think Chase Edmonds, I look at him as a top 15 running back rest of the season, and I don't think that he's viewed in that light. I think he's a massive buy low.
You mentioned their workload in the red zone, specifically with James Conner. To me, the bigger threat that would worry me as a Chase Edmonds manager is Kyler Murray, because he loves to score those rushing touchdowns. He's such a threat in the red zone. How much does that worry you when you're thinking about Edmonds rest of the season? Not so much Conner, or I guess the fact that there's Conner and Kyler both potentially stealing touches.
I think it's a factor you have to consider and account for, but the other thing with Kyler is we haven't seen him running like he did last year. He hasn't been. Like, Kyler has been so dang good for us in fantasy this year based off of the passing. This guy is like, he was averaging, before the shoulder injury last year, he was averaging nearly a touchdown. I think it was over a touchdown per game. We're not seeing that this year. So I think the concerns on Kyler are a little bit overblown. If I'm going to be worried about the red zone production, or at least the touchdown equity in the offense, I'm more concerned about James Conner than I am Kyler Murray. But this is, again, I think that Chase Edmonds, his pass game role still accounts and makes up for a decent amount of that. And that is going to stay, because we've seen enough weeks right now where Rondale Moore, I don't think he's going to take over this year. Not if Christian Kirk stays healthy, not if A.J. Green stays healthy. So these underneath targets are still going to be Chase Edmonds to have. The touchdowns go back his way. I mean, if he would have scored in any one of these games and when he was healthy in weeks 1 through 4, you're looking at a guy that had been top 10 in production, top 8 in production, if he had like just 2 touchdowns in some of those games. So I think that's the type of upside we're looking at with Chase Edmonds.
I assume we'll be pretty unanimous on this trade comparison, but I'll ask it anyways just to give you a chance to clown on whoever accepted this trade. One of the trades that went down was trading Michael Thomas for Chase Edmonds straight up. I have to imagine you're taking the Edmonds side.
I'm taking the Edmonds side because, Lord help me, when do we know that Michael Thomas is ever going to get back to the field? Like, he hasn't even started practicing yet. Like, how do you trade for Michael Thomas at that point? Like, you have to be, an undefeated team?
Yeah.
And you're just looking at it like somebody that maybe puts you over the top for a championship? Because outside of that, unless I'm undefeated right now and my roster is stacked, I'm not making the move.
Totally agree. Yates, let's stick with the running backs. Who are you willing to sell high on right now?
Yeah, into the all offseason, I was talking about Michael Carter, the New York Jets running back, and was saying that this is a guy that we need to be targeting as an RB3, RB4. Then we started to see Ty Johnson emerge as someone that was a legitimate candidate in this backfield to take touches away. And so kind of backed off of that a little bit in draft season, but the talent was always there for Michael Carter. It was just a matter of, is he going to get the opportunity? And we now have clarity that he's getting the opportunity. This past week, 20 total opportunities here for Michael Carter in this backfield. Now, it's the New York Jets offense, and they suck. So you got to take that into account when you say the upside of Michael Carter probably not going to be there all that much, especially. But now I think moving forward, where you have Mike White, you have Joe Flacco now in town, and we know that Joe Flacco loves to lean on his running backs out of the backfield as far as target totals out of the backfield. So I think Michael Carter is going to soak up targets here, and we know that he has the talent to be able to make those count. So Michael Carter moved all the way up to RB26 in my rest of season rankings, but this is still saying that this is a guy that I want to have on my rosters, but at the same time, if I can move up a tier, if I can take him and off of this game and I can move him for someone who has a similar workload guarantee, but yet is in a better offense, I think that's a winning strategy. So Michael Carter, for me, I would be willing to sell him for Antonio Gibson. You might have to add a little bit more onto that, but Michael Carter for Antonio Gibson, I would prefer the Gibson side of that trade, even though Gibson has disappointed so far this year.
Joe Flacco, I once watched check down to a running back on 4th and 29. So, yes, he does love throwing to the running backs, and they got it. So, I mean, what do I know? He's obviously way better at football than I am. Guys, let's move to the rest of season rankings here quickly, which can help give fans a sense of how to value both their own players and players who may be on the trade block in their leagues. I want to start with you, Yates. Who's your biggest riser in the rest of season running back rankings, and who is your biggest faller?
Yeah, I just finished talking about him. It's Michael Carter. I think that he moved from RB37 to RB26 in my rest of season running back rankings. So this was the, as we looked at Michael Carter, it was saying, okay, is he going to get the main opportunity in this backfield, or is Ty Johnson going to remain involved? And we got clarity here that this is Michael Carter's backfield moving forward. And again, I was a big fan of his coming into the year. So I think that this is the opportunity now that we needed to be able to say, bump Michael Carter up the rankings. As far as a faller, guys, it's got to be Mike Davis. Mike Davis at this point, like, I don't want him on any of my rosters. And which is, coming into the year, I was like, well, I don't really want Mike Davis, but at least he's going to get opportunity, right? He's going to get volume in this offense. And that's just not the case anymore. We're seeing Cordero Patterson as the main option out of the backfield here for Atlanta, and there's just no upside whatsoever to Mike Davis. So he fell all the way to RB36.
So I know you kind of touched on this, but like you said, you did have Carter as your sell high, but also your biggest riser. Can you sort of square for me a little better how you can have those two seemingly opposite stances?
Of course, yeah. So Michael Carter definitely moves up rankings, but that creates an opportunity to be able to sell high because they did move up so high. So it's not saying that Michael Carter isn't going to have value, right? That's not the point here. That's not what I'm saying. He's going to have value, and I think that he's going to be a consistent low-end RB2, high-end RB3 in weekly rankings moving forward. However, if we can take advantage of that rise and we can sell high to the point where we can move up a tier for someone who is disappointing, who is not delivering based on their opportunity or whatever, then that is a unique opportunity to be able to take advantage of that. So it's not saying that Michael Carter, is a sell high because he performed well and then it's going to come crashing back down. No, I think he's here to stay, but at the same time, it does create an opportunity to be able to move up a tier.
Let's do some trade comparisons with Mike Davis. Would you trade him straight up for Rashad Bateman?
Yes. Oh, 100%.
What about Mike Davis and Jonathan Taylor for Robert Woods, Chase Edmonds, and Elijah Mitchell?
Oh, say the first part of that again.
Mike Davis and Jonathan Taylor for Robert Woods, Chase Edmonds, and Elijah Mitchell.
I don't want Mike Davis, but I want Jonathan Taylor. So I probably will take that side of the deal.
That side has both the best and worst player in the deal. Derek, how about you? Which running backs are on the move in your rest of season rankings?
For me, the biggest riser, and this is we get news and we have to adjust. Malcolm Brown going on the IR is massive for Myles Gaskin. I like him. He's going to be one of the biggest risers for me. And I understand that's maybe just a 3-week window, but his value bump from that, and if he's able to show that he's willing or he's able to produce in, say, a 65% touch share or snap roll in this backfield again like he did last year, being the guy, then I think Myles Gaskin could be a massive guy down the stretch for all of us. If you look at the next 7 games he has, 6 of those next 7 games, these teams are 25th or worse in explosive run rate allowed. So the avenue for Myles Gaskin to perform well after a game, we saw him get 19 touches versus Salvon Ahmed's 9, 46 snaps versus Ahmed's 22, and he garnered all the work inside the 10. Even on a team that I know is going to throw the ball a ton, Myles Gaskin is a massive riser. And for a faller, I want nothing to do. Like Yates is talking about Mike Davis, I want nothing to do with Josh Jacobs at all. The Raiders are not blocking well. You look at their offensive line, 28th, 29th in adjusted and second level yards per Football Outsiders. I mean, they're terrible, man. And Josh Jacobs is a guy, even if we're projecting health after the bye, he has one breakaway run all season long. You could talk about his effectiveness, injuries, all those types of things, and you won't be wrong. You could talk about the blocking in front of him, and again, you won't be wrong. If you're able to get rid of Josh Jacobs, and he is a guy that's just plummeting down the board for me in a multiplayer trade, please do so. Do so now.
Now, Yates, I want to give you a chance for another rebuttal here going back to Gaskin, because just last night you tweeted, and I quote, "This certainly helps Myles Gaskin, but I'm still very concerned about the usage game in and game out. Sell high if you can, just to avoid the headache." So for Derek, this is somebody who's rising up the rankings, but you want to sell high here again. How do you square that?
Again, he's moving up rankings just because he has to, because Malcolm Brown's out of the picture. But yet this doesn't mean that this is not going to be a headache still. Excuse me, a headache for fantasy managers moving forward, where I think that we could see one game they only run the ball 5 times. This Miami Dolphins offense is just kind of one that I want Jaylen Waddle, I want Mike Gesicki, and Tua in Superflex, and that's pretty much it.
I'll give you a couple trade comparisons here, Derek. Would you trade Nyheim Hines and Zach Moss for Myles Gaskin and Ben Roethlisberger?
I would do that. I don't even care about Roethlisberger. I would do that for Gaskin, yeah, because I want nothing to do with Moss.
Might be the grossest trade of all time.
Yeah, I mean, Moss almost made my list here as far as somebody that you need to get rid of.
Let's do another one here. Josh Jacobs and Alexander Mattison for Saquon Barkley.
That's a real trade? Yes, give me Barkley. Yes. Easily. Like, I'm pressing accept before I break my phone.
I cannot emphasize how real all of these trades are. Every one of them has actually happened. So again, I give it a try.
Somebody send me an invite. I need into these leagues. Bad.
Derek, let's stick with you. Which wide receiver rose the most in your rest of season rankings after week 7, and who fell the most?
All right, Yates, we've been conversing on a lot of different players. I think you're going to like this take. Michael Pittman, baby. Rising up the boards. I think that, look, we see Wentz actually now healthy, quietly playing pretty well in Indy. You look at Michael Pittman, all the wide receivers are 15 or more targets. This dude is 23rd in yards per route run, right ahead of DJ Moore. He's going to get a 20 to 25% target share every single week. He's garnering a lot of the end zone looks. You look at the schedule coming up, too. He is jumping up my board. He gets Tennessee, the Jets, Jacksonville, Buffalo's not great, Tampa Bay, and then Houston. This schedule is fantastic. Yes, I love Pittman. He is jumping massively up the board.
And Yates, what do you have to add? Because just as a spoiler alert, he was also your biggest wide receiver riser.
He is. And again, I was really high on Michael Pittman coming into the year. So the fact that he is continuing to rise is saying a lot. So Michael Pittman Jr., all the way up to wide receiver 22. I mean, how can we not watch this guy on the football field and say that this is a star in the making? This guy is just producing deep downfield, underneath. He's yards after the catch. He is a all-around wide receiver, and he is the wide receiver 1 for this Colts offense, no question. So, yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. all the way up to wide receiver 22 in rest of season rankings. If he continues to perform, could he rise even higher? Really,
I'm not even sure that fans need to be concerned as much with Carson Wentz as you might have been before the season, because Sunday night in a rainstorm notwithstanding, he's actually looked better than I certainly expected, at least going into the year. And, you know, he has that connection with Frank Reich, who obviously runs a nice, efficient offense, and he's looked pretty good. He particularly shredded the Ravens defense at the game I was at, that Monday night game, which was not as fun to watch, although the end was a whole lot of fun to watch. Let's do a trade comparison here, and I assume you guys would both say yes, but would you trade Tony Pollard for him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, easily.
That seems like an easy one. Derek, who's your biggest wide receiver faller?
All right, we're going to go back to Carolina here. Robby Anderson, dear Lord. He's hurt me in DFS. He's hurt me in season long. He's getting nothing but targets, and he's absolutely doing nothing with them. I mean, you have 100 wide receivers that have gotten 15 or more targets this year. Robby Anderson is 92nd. 92nd in yards per route run. He's just been terrible. He's not doing anything with the volume, and I think if anything down the stretch, if he continues to just face plant with the volume, we could see DJ Moore just keep getting fed even more, and his team go away from Robby Anderson. So while it sounds like, you know, maybe I'm just being down on the Carolina passing attack, no, I'm just down on Robby Anderson. I want nothing to do with him the rest of the season.
Do you think it's an Anderson issue or a Darnold issue?
I think you could say it's both. I mean, considering the fact that we've seen DJ Moore produce inside of this offense, despite Darnold, I point to this being more of a Robby Anderson issue.
Would you trade Anderson away for Kenny Golladay?
I know. No comment.
Sure, give me Golladay. I have no faith in Anderson, and that's really gross to say.
What about a guy we talked about earlier, Allen Robinson? As weird as that sounds to ask.
Yeah, these are nasty trades, man. Sure, give me Alvin Robinson. At least I know the talent.
Why not?
I mean, if I'm out, I got to be all the way out, right? Like, I mean, there's, you know, oh God, these trades you're giving me here. We went from slam dunk to absolutely just cringeworthy.
I'm trying to mix it up for you, man.
You want that 6-player trade again? You want that one over?
Yeah, I can give you another 11 player
Robby Anderson
trade
somewhere in there.
Yates, who's your biggest faller at wideout?
It has to be Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, the guy is still talented. He's still getting open, but it is just not happening here in Cleveland. And, I mean, the injury could have played a role in his production this past week, but it's just the flukiest things. It's just, there's someone put a curse on Odell Beckham Jr. when he was traded to Cleveland. It's just not happening here. So, OBJ now at wide receiver 41 on the year for me in my rest of the season rankings. There's the possibility that he falls even further than that.
Yeah, just 3 of 5 games this year. He's had under 30 yards, still no touchdowns on the season. Seems like it's just not destined to work out in Cleveland, regardless of who's under center. Let's get in a quick comparison here. Odell Beckham and Jonathan Taylor again for Stephon Diggs and Chris Godwin.
I want the running back in that situation, so I will take Jonathan Taylor. Even though, I mean, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin, they're great. I want the running back in that situation, though.
That's totally fair. Let's open up the mailbag for a few questions here. I want to sprinkle in some more quarterback talk since we don't really get to them usually in the show. First up, at Raps Kicks Jags, asks if we can rank Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, and Tua rest of season. Now, it is a shame that this question didn't include Kyle Allen, or the three names could have been a Ryan, a Derek, and a Kyle in the same question, which would have been a lot of fun for us three on the show together. But it is Tannehill, Carr, and Tagovailoa. So, Yates, I'll start with you. How would you rank those three rest of season?
I'd probably take Carr, and then it's close between Tannehill and Tua. I'd probably give the slight edge to Tua at this point over Tannehill, though.
What about you, Derek?
I'm going to go with Tua as my top guy. I'm going to lean into pace and passing rate, and Miami's top 5 in both. So I think that they're going to continue to throw the ball. So give me Tua as a clear guy over the other two. And I guess I'll lean Carr over Tannehill. If I'm talking about I don't believe in the Raiders' ability to run the ball, they still have a top 10 passing rate rest of the season. So I'll go Carr over Tannehill. With Tannehill, we just haven't seen... The production hasn't been there, and a lot of that's still been... I mean, a lot of their touchdowns are just being on the rushing department, and Derrick Henry isn't going anywhere. So, yeah.
Next question, at C0PE4 asks if he should trade Kyler Murray for a running back. And again, I'm going to assume that he has a starting capable quarterback to fill in for Murray. But would you guys trade Kyler Murray for, let's call it an RB2?
No, I wouldn't. I would hold on to Kyler. It would have to be... It all depends on the running back, obviously, but I think it has to... at this point, I would just hold on to Kyler. Derek mentioned earlier, he's not running a ton, but he's still getting the job done for fantasy at a top-tier level, so I would prefer to hold on to Kyler.
Derek, you're holding on to Kyler too?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, to get rid of Kyler, even in one quarterback formats, you're looking at a guy that's probably top 3 fantasy quarterback the rest of the season, can easily be the runaway QB1 if we do see him start running on top of what he's done in the passing game. So considering that for a running back, I got to be getting back a guy where I feel like is top 12, top 15 probably the rest of the season, and you're probably not going to get it in a trade. So yeah, give me Kyler.
Finally, it looks like Jerry Jeudy will be returning to the field this week. At Corey_412 asks if we're starting him fresh off IR.
I don't know if I want to start him necessarily right away. I will start him as a flex option, but not as like a top 36 wide receiver.
Derek?
Yeah, I think he's going to fall in the flex. And at this point, I mean, if your team's gotten it this far, you're probably not banking on Jerry Jeudy as much of anything more than a flex. But I like him rest of the season. I'd probably be starting him because the upside is there. Their matchups also are going to dictate that Denver... Cortland Sutton's been the deep guy. Jerry Jeudy, I think, is the guy they're going to use underneath a lot. And they face a lot of too high safety zone coverage teams moving forward. So I like Jeudy. But I wouldn't be starting him as anything more than that.
Yates, you have been a great sport the last couple of shows with all of our TV talk, so I will spare you that to end today's show. I am going to stay in the Marvel arena, however, and ask very quickly for your favorite Marvel movie, and because I suspect most people would say Endgame or Infinity War, the original Avengers, one of the big team-up movies, I'm going to ask you to pick a different one than those big three. So what do you have for me?
Let's go with... I gotta go Black Panther, man. Black Panther's so much fun.
Good pick.
Definitely
That's
a classic.
So much fun.
Derek, I was going to ask, I'm not sure if you're a Marvel fan, but it sounds like you definitely are. Which one's your favorite?
I mean, I was going to take the low-hanging fruit of Endgame, but I'll go off the beaten path. I absolutely loved Captain Marvel. Really loved that movie. So I'll go with Captain Marvel here.
Interesting. I was actually somewhat disappointed by Captain Marvel, so I'm surprised by that. But I mean, these movies are all good. I like Thor a lot, even the early ones.
You've been giving Yates a bunch of trash about TV takes. What are we going on to movie takes here? Really? That's oh my lord.
Listen,
I started the show off with this.
I had big expectations for Captain Marvel. I thought it was a letdown. But again, I'm a huge Thor guy, so like I'm the type of person who loves Thor: The Dark World, even though literally everybody hates that movie. So I
Ragnarok would be up there.
Ragnarok was
very
it.
good. I mean, again, they're all really good. Bad Marvel movies are still more entertaining than a lot of what's out there right now. So
bad Marvel movies over the best that DC can offer easily.
Yes, I would agree with that. I have no rebuttal. So finally, some quality pop culture answers here on one of the shows that I got to host. Thank you both for a fantastically fun show today. I really appreciate the entertainment and the insights we gave to the listeners. Please, everybody, remember all the cool opportunities we mentioned today, including Air Medcare with the promo code FantasyPros, Prize Picks with the promo code Gridiron, and Kraken, which is at kraken.com/FantasyPros. Most of all, thank you, the fans, for listening. For Yates and Derek, I'm Ryan Wormley. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.